Yet again, I urge you, please go and subscribe to the In-Depth YouTube channel. And when you subscribe, not just subscribe, watch, click the link, watch, and share, because we're sharing stories and perspectives that would help you, especially within this series, get deeper insights into what you need to know before you start casting your vote next year, before you start doing things that will change your life, why you're very important. So this is In-Depth. This book, I'll show you in a better day. This book, I read this book a few months ago. It was sent to me, of course, by the author. And the book is titled, I Am Because We Are. You know, first of all, I know the woman on the cover. She's a woman after my heart, even though she's late now. And today's woman, the magazine that I still publish, had given her an award, a Rare Gem Award, several years ago, right? And then her daughter now sends me this book to read. And trust me, once I read it, I felt that it spoke to much more than me, that it spoke of much more than Dora Akunyili, or even if the daughter who wrote the book, Chidiogo. There was much more in that book that I figured that I must share with the public. And at some point in time, I'm going to read some excerpts of it. But first, let me introduce to you the woman who wrote that book, the girl, daughter, baby, now woman, mother of one herself. Her name is Chidiogo Akunyili-Parr. She's a Nigerian Canadian author. She's a speaker and consultant with a passion for human development and connection. She is the founder of She Roars, an organization committed to coaching women of color around the world to connect to their intuition and purpose. Her work is focused on harnessing the power of our interdependence with a foundation in the humanist African philosophy of Ubuntu, which celebrates our shared humanity. Chidiogo has lived and worked across 4 continents and speaks 7 languages, including Mandarin, German, Spanish, and French, allowing for an even deeper connection with people. She led the growth and impact of the Global Shapers community across Africa and the Middle East. It's my pleasure to be speaking with you at last. Isn't it nice to have you here, Chidiogo?
Last indeed, and just in time. Thank you, AO, for having me. It is my joy and honor.
You have such peace and such, your mother was very vibrant. She wouldn't speak in these tones. She wouldn't. So this must be from your dad, who's also late.
I think we're always like a paper mache of all the people that have come before us. So for all I know, it's from my grandmother or my great-grandmother or the one before, So I like to think that I'm a mixture of all those that have come before, and at the same time, also a product of my own lived experiences.
Fantastic. Besides the fact that you have such great teeth, which I believe might be genetic. I would like to know,
that's
though,
from my father.
From your father. We're going to get into this sometime in the conversation. A country takes both, I say a country, because by virtue of the fact that their lives in some ways were tied to Nigeria's history. A country takes your mother, takes your father, and you still love the country.
I like to, I like to also remember that the country gave to my mother, to us, and to my father, up until the moment it didn't. And also like to remember that there were individual actions that worked against them, not the collective. And I like to remember that my mother always reminded us that we were not a product of the bad eggs. We were a greater people than the few that want to put us in a darker light. So with that in heart, I do love my country, yes.
That's beautiful. So now, the book. I would like to start from the point of this book. First of all, the title, I Am Because We Are, also speaks to Ubuntu, which is the essence of the work that you've done and still do. And then you're writing a book that has the same title, but this time is telling the story of your mother. Is that coincidence or God incidence? Tell me about the
I
journey to
love
writing
it.
the
God
story.
incidents. Oh, I haven't heard that before. 100% God incidents. 100%. I kept wanting to come up with the title of the book, and I had this intuition to trust that it will come in time. And I'd finished the entire book, and it was a gentleman, my Nigerian publisher. I was talking to him, and he's like, "It's the title is clear. It's I am because you are," which was in the book. And I was like, "Oh my God!" It was always there because my mother was always about the greater we, and that was then the iteration of "I am because we are," really inviting us into that unity to really already embody it. So it was a combination of different things, but Ubuntu came to me in 2011-ish when I was getting ready for a speech, and that was a theme I focused on, and it's been with me ever since as an anchor philosophy that has so much wisdom to impart.
Mm. And did your mother watch that speech?
Oh, wow. I didn't know you knew about that. Yes, she did.
I read the
My
book,
mother.
honey.
My mother was sick at the time, and she was very disappointed. I was the class speaker in my graduation from a master's program at Johns Hopkins, and she was really proud. We had a whole journey leading up to that, but she was too unwell to come. But she watched it online, and she called me afterwards, and she's like, "Ubuntu, I am because we are." She's like singing, and you can tell she's dancing from her voice. Also, as you said, my mom is very vibrant, so that was a memory I hold dear.
But that's interesting because you're not the first daughter. In fact, you are the only daughter that your mom didn't quite carry at birth because she had to travel,
Correct.
she had to leave you. And there it is, you're the one telling the story, her story. So as I go deeper into the journey, I'm asking you to answer for me now. What's the why? What's the how? What were the challenges? Did you say, "Oh, Mom, I don't want to write the story," especially because it's like it's written in her voice?
Yes, the book is written in her voice. And, a lot of who I am, and I know there's something that we share a belief in, is listening and trusting intuition. And, I always trusted that I would know when the book felt right. And my initial intuition was to write in her voice, because you mentioned right away, your voice is not your mother's voice. Your mom wouldn't talk like this. So I was like, how am I going to write my mom's story in a way that you can feel her? And at the same time, how could I even dare to write in her voice? Because we don't show up in the world the same way in terms of how we speak. So I gave up on that, and I wrote the entire book as if telling you her story. And I read it just like, this is wrong. This doesn't feel right. And I had to go back and seize the courage of that initial invitation to say, I want people to meet my mother. And my mother, if she's telling her story, nobody's telling it for her. She is telling you her story. And that was really what I kept going back to. So I went back and rewrote the whole book, and I found that actually all I had to do was step away, remove myself, and she was already there. And this goes back to how we carry all these people in us. You just sort of have to find the little piece that is her. And the book felt right. And I thought, okay, yes. And that's the journey. The why is trusting. She came to me to write the story, and I trusted in that invitation, checked with my family, and they were all excited. My father was very excited up until the very end. The last conversation we had, he was very excited about the book and telling that story and all the ups and downs of her life. He was at peace with that being shared, which meant a lot to me.
Because there were a lot of very personal things shared in this book, personal challenges, personal difficulties within the family. Your family certainly wasn't the perfect family. Like, I don't even know if there ever is any perfect family. Do you think there is a perfect family?
Thank you for bringing that up, because that was really my heart intention as I told her story. So I wanted you to meet her. The fact that she's just a person like you and I, faced challenges, went through difficulties. She was not born Dora Akunyili, as you met her, she evolved. And within that were challenges and pain and suffering and struggle. But within that was always the belief that she was going to make a change. And I wanted that to come through, not because she's a perfect human or had a perfect life, but for you to know that, to be able to relate, because as you said, no one has a perfect anything.
That's beautiful. And would it be safe if I said that's the essence of your marriage? That's the essence of your message of the book. If I'm wrong, tell me what the essence of the message is.
The essence of, I like to think that this book, a life can never, I don't think you can capture a life in one thing. So as one of the struggles of writing is like, what is the one message? And at the end, I thought there are many messages for different people. And I've been experiencing that in sharing and hearing people reflect back. People take away different things. It might be her courage. It might be her vulnerability. It might be her strength. It might be how she moved through pain. It might be just resonating with the mistakes she made, or her dreams. And, so the essence is that of life is complex, and the invitation is to embrace that complexity and always believe that you are on your path. You are guided. You matter. And, if she had given up at any point in life, millions of people would not have been impacted. And she never gave up. She always believed that her life mattered, and she lived it that way. So yes, if I had to pick an essence that is a culmination of it all, is that one can trust their own path and live in integrity with that which is guiding you and is your truth.
Mm-hmm. Because I would have thought, I remember, people will have to read the book. Let me see your own copy. This is the Nigerian version. Oh.
Yes.
And yes. Chidiogo. What does Chidiogo mean?
Chidiogo, God is gracious.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
God is gracious. Because, I read about the struggles your mother have, managing her 5 kids, being a PhD student, multiple PhD student, being everything, having a husband who was absent and away too. So I'm like, I could just see, we didn't know that Dora was human, like you said. Dora was courageous. Dora was vibrant. Dora faced fraudulent Nigerian pharmaceutical industry and won. When you guys heard things like, she survived so many attacks on her life that she, how did it make you, the children, feel at that time? Did you at any point in time want to say, Mommy, this is enough?
Again, if you know my mother, which you do, you know that she dances to the beat of her own drum. And that's something we've learned a long time ago. So what this meant was that, not that you couldn't share your feelings, but her energy and her belief was infectious in some way. So she's someone who can convince you, even when you're not convinced that, she's all right, everything is all right, despite the threats and the fetish threats, the real threats, the assassination attempts, she's like, I am fine. God is in control. Everything is okay. And, she shared it with such conviction that we believed as well, because she was very clear that this was a battle that she was also willing to give her life for. So where do you start going? No, Mommy, step down. This is the thing that she's already given herself to completely. So in many ways, we trusted with the same faith that she had, that her role in this position, in this case of NAFDAC, was a critically important one. And all we could do as a result was support her.
Did you find yourself connecting the dots backwards as you wrote this book, though?
Huge. I think, there's a part in the book that I literally say, we got it backwards, and that's okay. Because, often you have someone's child and you just know them from the moment you're you remember,
You're
and they're just your
aware.
mom. You've never really asked, like I had 35 years of my life before I had my daughter. I've lived a whole life, but she's only going to know me from perhaps 5 years from now because she's just 10 months. So this is to say I only knew my mom from the lens of her daughter. So imagine going back to her school teachers in primary school, to her best friends in university, to the first people that courted her, to, stories from the war, stories from her siblings, cousins, co-workers. So I got to not just connect the dot, but really see the full picture of this woman that ultimately all of us had pieces of her story, be it that knowing her as a public figure, be it knowing her as a mom. And this book presents the woman, the person, the child, the daughter. And again, my hope was always that we could relate because all of us have pieces of our stories in many dimensions of our lives. This is the fullness of her story.
And it had to come from you. And you would never would you have thought it would be you, but you've done it. And in the course of writing this book, you lost your father. Now, your mother confronted. Did you finish the book before he died?
I finished. The book was a month from print. It was done. I added the chapter on his death after his death. The book was done. He read the last manuscript, had DHL'd me his comments, and I just implemented that and finalized it. And we were celebrating that. And yes.
So I go in that direction because it appears to me, when I said at the beginning that it's like a nation has taken the two people you love that brought you to this world and you still love the nation. And is there something about them that has kept that in you, which is a lesson some of us can take as we raise our children, because we may not be perfect. As a mother myself, I worry, have I done the right thing by my children? Have I not done the right thing by my children? So I'm wondering, what are the lessons that teaches you? What's the conviction that you get, having been parented by those two, that keep you to still love your country regardless? If that makes any sense.
It's one of my father's favorite questions you'll get from people is like, Chike, how did you manage to raise all these children? He loved that question. And he would tell you discipline. And
he was a disciplinarian.
He was. What I will share, I'm just going to kind of talk and see where this answer leads. It's a really complex answer because there's not one thing. But what I would say is that my mother taught us the same thing that she believed deeply in. For example, you say, oh, mommy, I want to get into university. She'll say, you're going to go to Harvard. And like, yeah, but no, there's like, one time my sister was trying to get into an UPenn at the time, and there were 500 applicants, was a transfer, and there were 2 spots or 1 spot. She went to my mom like, hey, mommy, I'm not sure. I don't know if this will work out. She's like, what's wrong? There's only 1 spot and 500. She's like, that 1 spot is for you. Without blinking, without hesitation. That was my mom's energy. She was someone who believe deeply in believe it, see it, you can have it, and, prayer, calling on God. And so this basically is a version of always being positive, always trusting that things would work out. So there's a version of that seeped into my pain and our mourning. As senseless as it is, it's there is a It's as senseless as it is. We like to remember. It's a tough one because we haven't made sense of it. And all you can do is take it one day at a time is the truth. And what I would say in truth is that we have become closer as a family as a result of having gone through such tragedies. And that's something that I know our parents would have been happy about. So just, we really value each other and hold each other up and are there for each other and check on each other. So it's just we understand the value of time and life, and we don't take any of it for granted. So there's things they taught us, but how could they prepare you for their death? You know? So things we're learning, and that learning is one that's be there for each other and healing.
I feel you, and I hear you, and I take away discipline and a positive spirit, knowing that there's not much more than you can give to your kids. And I wonder, how do we instill that in the youngsters of today? Now, I would like this, one of the things I can understand, therefore, why it appeared that Dora Akunyili's spirit was broken after she lost a very major election that she ran for, that she won and didn't get. Would it be correct to say her spirit was broken? And maybe that probably also broke her. It broke her, right? Right. And she tried, but somehow God thought otherwise. I can't imagine what it was like to be, because it was like her chaplet, her rosary followed her everywhere.
Yes.
Constantly praying. But it seemed not to have worked before. Did that affect your faith? Or how did she take it?
The part on the election, right?
Yes, the part on the election,
I think the key word here is what you said around that she won. And that was how, that was where her pain lay. It's not that she lost, because if she's lost and that's the will of the people, that's a different emotion. That's just disappointment. But she was truly hurt because the people, as she believed it and went to court with this very clear belief and the proof of it, and was, dismissed by virtue of just semantics of the days, the filing, how sort of mago, and then ultimately dismissed. So she was pained that the people weren't heard and that the work she wanted to do for the people could not be achieved, because that was where her heart really was. It wasn't, sort of the power. It was always, I want to help people. She would always say, I want to help the poor. And in this position, even if it's just my salary that I can give, it would make such a change. She would say this. She would talk about all the ways she was going to make people's lives better. And for that to be taken away, I don't know if I would bring God into, because God does their part. And ultimately, there is an invitation for us all as human as well to step into what is right. And when that's thwarted, then that's a different situation. I believe that was what happened.
Loss has such a bitter taste, and even more so where there is injustice. I was frustrated by the broken system and knew that the vote of the people had not been counted. It was a time of deep self-reflection. I couldn't shake the feeling of having been sullied by the entire process. That's the point, solid. It's like, what was that about? Like, they've tainted me, they've stained me. Here I am, very straightforward. So that solid part, do you think had your mother lived longer, she would have still run again for office? Because the illness came shortly after that.
100, my mom, even in her deathbed, kept saying, my work is not done. My work is not done. And in many ways, that's one of the reasons why I trust that this book has an important role to play. And I trust that this conversation has an important role to play, because this is a continuation of her work, right? That we're here talking about it, talking about that drive. And, to your question, it's this, running it takes a lot of courage, because it's not easy. And, it also took a lot of courage. It also takes the people that are voting as well to come out. So there's this two-way street of everyone is invited to show up. And she did her part. And I think she would have shown up again and again and again, no matter how painful and difficult, because she was so convinced that this was her life's mission, people to help Nigeria come into herself as good people, great nation, to become, more than we have been or been allowed to be. So yes, she would have run as often as she could have had the energy, she would run smarter each time, but always staying true to her values, as much as the scenario might want to pull you into a soiled arena. You can say no. And my mother showed that.
You know, I want to read the part that speaks to who she was, how she took herself into the work that she did, and how surprising it is, which is someone of courage and integrity. And there was supposed to be delivery of fertilizers. And let me start from here. This is page 177. From the first line, it says, "Beside me was a parked lorry, bags of fertilizers stacked high and visible from the top. In my left hand was a piece of paper and a red pen in my right. Ndibeanyi, no, I greeted as welcome. I continued in Igbo to be sure that my message was clear. Then she goes on, the reason I've called you today is to share your government allowance of fertilizer for your farms. Blank stares met mine, and some whispers wondered about this unorthodox way of selling the fertilizer, not knowing that they had a right to it for free. One voice rose louder than a hushed murmur, wondering if perhaps I was hoping for a bidding war to fetch me even more money. Several nods and hisses met the speculation. Undeterred and even enjoying the scene, I can imagine your mom smiling. I kept my words to a minimum, knowing that the only way to communicate the way forward was by action. When I call your name, I announced, please come up one by one and take your share of fertilizer allocated to you and to your people. Adazienu, and they read. Adazia, calling them, and I read out, summoning representatives who in turn were handed the corresponding bags of fertilizer due to them and their community. Their body language was of surprise and disbelief. Each one quickly grabbing the outstretched bag and scurrying away before the surreal play turned on them, and the bags were taken back by the same benevolent hands that gave them away so freely. By the time the sun was making its way west, the lorry was emptied of all its wares, and all village reps were well on their way back home, with strict instructions not to sell in turn, or they would face future consequences. One representative's words stayed with me. Madam, she said, speaking in Tikibu, to buttress the sincerity of her words, I have never heard of such a thing as free fertilizer, let alone from the government. I didn't even know that they knew we are alive. Thank you, Ma. I received her prayers and thanks with the humility of knowing that I wasn't doing her and the community a favor, but simply doing my job. I skipped when she went to the office. It's back in my office. I was met with hostility. I made many friends that day, but even more enemies among the rich and powerful in the local government, whom I had robbed of extra income. Madam, this is not how we do it. This was both a statement and an accusation, shouted on repeat, their voices wanting to overwhelm me with the extent of their indignation. Once they grew tired of shouting, I responded coolly, only betrayed by the fire in my eyes, daring them to do their worst. From now on, I said, surprising even myself with the sternness of my voice, this is how it will be done. Did your mother give you those words? I could imagine the movie as she started. I knew her, I met her. So that fire in her eyes, I can imagine it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? This is how it's done now. We are giving, because the story is about fertilizer meant for farmers. Before that time, the local government officials will make them pay to get it, correct? Meanwhile, it was free.
Yes.
That's the story of our lives as a people. That we had somebody who could stand with fire in her eyes and do that means there are lessons for us. But that she paid that kind of high price, was it worth it after all?
I think it's always worth it to do the right thing. That's something that I believe deeply in. And you always get, as you saw in that excerpt, you always have people push against you, and you make enemies. But I like to think that those are good. They're not your friends. They're not people you need to have as your friends. Those that don't share the values that you do. So that being said, I believe deeply that the right thing is always the way, the way to our, almost our freedom in some
Like
ways.
Uhuru.
And we, sorry?
The way to Uhuru.
Thank you. Thank you. The way to Uhuru. That's so well said. Exactly.
Now, as I said, I'm having this conversation on this platform as different from what I would do on today's woman, because I figure that this is for more than just the women. This is for everybody who's standing there thinking of going to the office or thinking of voting for someone going ahead. So as you listen to my desire, what do you think are the leadership lessons and the responsibility, personal leadership as well, that will take away from the story of Dora Akunyili in the book, I Am Because We Are?
Thank you for this. You know, I all my life I remember growing up, I should say, I remember just my parents talking about the challenges of the country. And then you fast forward 30 years later, 40 years later, we're still more or less, if not worse off, in the same situation. And my mother picked a battle. You know, in her case, she had lost her son to fake drugs. And that was the battle she put her life on the line for. You know, we can't keep losing lives. Before that, she was, you know, she showed up for her community, didn't have clinics. She showed up to help the villagers raise money to do that. Before that, you know, after that, and so it goes. So I think the message is we have the challenges and they are a lot. What can you do? Where can you have an impact? It was the early 90s when she was in the village in Angulo, her husband's village, and where she said there's no hospitals. Children are dying because they have to travel all these kilometers to get healthcare, and you know, older people, all of that. And she galvanized the village. Where is your activism? And that could just be casting your ballot. That could be that, right? But I trust that there's more. So I think the message that my mother always had for us is you matter. So what is that fire in your heart? And how can you trust that that fire is guiding you to your action, and that your action can transform so much more than you might even believe? So what does it look like to believe and, you know, go on? And once you step into that space of, you know, I'm showing up for your family, your neighborhood, your community, then the whole universe, so to say, conspires to support that fight and that change. Because I like to think that the equilibrium is what all the forces are, you know, God is on our side for us to come a little closer to an equilibrium than this world we're living in, where human lives are lost on a daily basis. So much has gone wrong, so much suffering. That's not who we that's not what we're intended, how we're intended to live. So what can you do about it? That's a personal question. And once you can connect to that, the invitation then becomes, how can you show up for this?
I wonder, how can those in diaspora show up for this? I remember that in the book, eventually, your mom got the opportunity for all her children to school abroad because she wanted better opportunity for them. It was just a chance thing that she did. Now, there are many parents in that kind of situation today. There are people migrants who've left Nigeria. It's like, how do you not leave Nigeria on its own, right? What can the diasporans do to help to keep, you know, towards the next elections, for example? I'm wondering what your thoughts are and how connected you are to what's happening around here.
Absolutely. I'm following very closely. I think what you're doing here is incredible. Just, you know, holding the space to inspire young people, to inspire votes, to inspire change. There are many diasporans that maybe just focus on elections with platforms. What does that look like to use your various platforms to encourage and inspire that, and also accountability. I see, one of the changes that you see in the last years is you're more people with phones in their hands and able to capture what's happening on the day and speaking up against. What does it look like to amplify bad, practices that are not in congruence with what it is that we design? We saw this happen in a few countries in East Africa, where it's the power of really putting it out on influential platforms of individuals, something that has gone wrong, something that's not right, and really bringing an awareness to it that it's like, once you put something in the light, it's hard for it to hide in darkness. Mm-hmm. So what does that look like for us to consciously call out all the things that want to work against true democracy? Freedom of one person, one vote. So I would say that's what comes to my heart for us to all sort of what platforms do I have? What voice do I have? And how do I use and exercise it? How do I use and exercise my power as an individual in this world that is so where our powers are amplified by technology? What does that look like to fully step into that?
I love that. Our powers are amplified by technology. So hopefully people are going to be amplifying the wrong thing. And does that bother you, though, amplifying the wrong thing? How do you sieve information out there?
The truth does not hide. And this is where we're almost 200 million. If we're all amplifying a truth, the few people that want to amplify, so to say, the wrong thing become a minority. And that would become very obvious. So that's where, again, it goes back to everybody matters. And it's when we don't speak up that the bad eggs can become your voice, or they can claim to own the truth, when in reality, it's not. And we all own that and have a responsibility to speak it.
Fantastic. I would like your final words to be around, I just wonder, if there was opportunity for you to be able to vote in an election in Nigeria, would you take it?
If there was a duty?
Opportunity to vote wherever it is that you are, and suddenly,
goodness, yes.
would you actively participate? I get others to do so too.
200%. It's one of the really, we're one step at a time, but it's something that really I pray we can solve to allow the diaspora to vote. This is something, we have such a large population of Nigerians, young, of all ages, across the world. It's part of our superpower is that Nigerians are everywhere. And that those people automatically more or less disenfranchised, or else you fly back home. I think it's a huge problem. And if I could, 100%, I would be there. Even for my mother's own election, I couldn't vote, for example, so let alone, in this critical moments in time where so much is at stake and so many of us would like to participate, but can't.
But I wonder what you say to someone who says, why doesn't she just come back to Nigeria if she wants to be voting? All these people that are abroad, they should come home and suffer like us.
All these big English is speaking. I would say it's a valid point. And I trust that there will be some people who make that decision, who can make that decision. And I like to invite everybody that can be always in your truth. My truth is that I have a 10-month-old daughter and I'm not in a position to. But if you are in a position to, that's something that I think would be wonderful. Even if you get 1% of the diaspora, why not?
Well, the truth is, regardless of where you are a Nigerian. And my personal belief that Nigerians, wherever it is that they are, should seek the information they require. If they want to run for office, that's fine. But at least be part of picking the leaders that will design the nation that you want to see. Are you with me on that?
Yes. I love that. And even if you're not on ground, you can still bring so much sort of value to the process by, speaking up wherever you can. The amplification through technology discussed, why not?
Thank you very much. And I hope people will get to read the book. But beyond that, that's it. I am because we are. You didn't send me this book because you wanted to be on my show. You just said, read it. But you know what? I couldn't help it. And that's what it is. I appreciate your time, waking up so early all the way in Toronto and being with us. Thank you so much, Chidiogo.
Thank you, AO. It's a pleasure. And my hope is that this word's invitation, the inspiration finds whoever it's meant to. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's it. We're done for today. But don't forget, you need to subscribe to the In-Depth channel on YouTube. And I'm not going to stop saying it because you can get information that's going to help you be better. Because at the end of the day, we are only as good as the impact we leave in the world. So why not you impact on the votes that you're going to cast come 2023? See ya.